All right, welcome back. Welcome back. So, um, yeah, the last. Let's just double check we're rocking here. So yeah, unfortunately, I have to do everything on a single screen at the moment. Just it's a grand size. It's 15 inch, so it's not bad. But yeah, it unfortunately doesn't allow you to see what you're doing in OBS. Obviously while you're using Ableton, so it can be a bit of a bit awkward, and that's why I'm tabbing back and forth, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so basically, look where we finished off. Just fixing my frame there. So where we finished off yesterday was we had basically finished a pre-master. Right now, before you get anything mastered, you always basically send it to the mastering engineer and they say whether or not it's ready, which is it's all to the whole part of mastering. Like, there's a lot of mystery toward mastering. Like, if someone said, like, what is mastering, there's no definitive answer, right? Because it comprises of several things. But if you were to just say to someone, mastering is signing off on the track and making sure it's ready before it's released, that's like a very broad statement. Like, but to be honest, that's all it is as well. Like, now, what if I send a mastering engineer something that's totally not ready? Like, like it's just a mess. Now they're gonna always say, go back and fix your mix and get it sitting right and do all this, that, and the other, right? And that's fair, and that's exactly what you'd expect. Um because obviously, how can you sign off on something that's like 2 channel stereo render of a full track as opposed to like a full mix of every individual element? Now, um, there's tools to correct issues with mixes that mastering engineers use, right? But and that's all well and good. But ideally, they won't have to fix anything, and then what they can do is they can embellish stuff. And basically, then what they're doing is they're getting it to an industry standard of loudness before whatever streaming or whatever kind of a platform you're going to put it on. Vinyl mastering would be a different thing. But essentially, it's signing off on a track so that it's ready to go. Now, um, what I did yesterday was I sent it to Nick in Monochrome, and he sent me back some mix feedback, right? So I'll read out what he says, and then I'll just say what I make of it, right? The first part of it here, let me just see. Actually, sorry, I have to get it on the old. He messaged me on Instagram, very casual, but let's see what we have. There we go. So also Nick has a Twitch stream which we will hopefully be rating someday. But this is the feedback he sent, right? So he says, I really like the overall vibe and production. Sounds well defined and thought through. I was like, good man. Thanks, Nick. Then he goes, there are a few things here that might that might need some refinement, right? And this reinforces some insecurities I had about the mix itself anyway. So I suppose in a way I was kind of leaving it up to chance, but at the same time I was still very conscious of it at the time as well. So, here we go here. So he says, the kick feels a bit boxy and clouds the low end too much. Would love to hear more of a groove between kick and bass. Okay, I definitely was insecure about the low end from early on, and I know what he means here when he says that it's clouding the low end. So the boxiness comes from the attack, right? So the attack is basically like wooden sounding attack. Like, it's not kind of a snap, it's more of a kind of a boxier sound, and more kind of if you knock on a hollow piece of whatever, like a cupboard or something that's like hollow wood. That's basically what he means there, and that's very, very true, because I know the sample that I layered at the 909 is extremely wooden. Now, I like how that presents itself in the mix, but I do feel like when I process the two elements together, I may have made a bollocks of it. So, good call there on the boxiness, and the cloudiness of the low end is just, it's too much bass in there. And you'll probably see yesterday, I took 6 dB out of like a particularly boomy frequency on there yesterday, and it still obviously wasn't enough, which, God, like the first one was obviously way too much. So look, this is how your ears fatigue. They basically get too used to hearing these sounds, and they lose all critical ability. You lose every aspect of it. You can't criticize your own work. So that's why you get an external pair of ears. And then I said to him afterwards, he said, like, basically, he was like, look, these are just suggestions, and it's okay to not agree. But I 100% agree, because I don't come from the whole artist kind of like this is my work kind of thing. Like I'm absolutely in that. That's not okay. Just to explain that, so I mean, like, I've been at this crack for long enough to know when I've done something wrong, as opposed to have made an artistic choice. Right now, I know that, but I do understand ear fatigue as well. So what I do is I rely heavily on either my friends or a professional to actually tell me what essentially what I have to do to fix it, or what's actually wrong with it in the first place. So that's the first bit of criticism there. Say right now, he does mention a tiny bit more separation would be awesome. Mostly cannot work on individual sounds. Sorry now. Okay. He means here, right? So he says more space between bass and synth, less overlapping frequencies. By working on that, the whole track will become bigger and more spacious and more interesting to listen to. Okay. So we've got two things we need to do here, right? First and foremost, the kick needs to be changed. Well, not changed. No, we'll get to that. The kick needs to be less boxy and less muddy in the low end, right? And we need to get the bass and kick talking nicely. That's important here, right? And as far as the separation goes between each element, so like between our drums and our bass, and say our bass and our synth, and then whatever synth and our effects and all that, these all have to be done separately as well. Now, I can imagine a lot of this will be done with EQ, but I also did just get the Fab Filter bundle, so I'm going to just jump in with that straight away and some samples. Now, I can't say I approve of what I'm about to do here, but like, you know, it's one of those things, you know, we're at the final stage and there is issues. So therefore you have to kind of take away any moment of, say, anything you've settled on, right? Anything you're like, that's it. You have to always be open to change it. And using Ableton in the correct way to change this stuff is exactly what you need to do, right? So we're going to go through a few tips and, well, we're going to go through this and finish it. So basically when I'm happy here, it's going to go back to Nick then. Hopefully he's happy enough to just get stuck in. And if not, as he said, look, it's just going to be a back and forth. Now, fortunately, the first time I actually sent tracks to him, which was, well, a track, the last time basically was all good. He was just straight away, he's like, yeah, it's grand, I'm going to just do a little bit of work on it here. And it came back and it sounded lovely, you know, it was really good, like nicely gelled together. But as well as that, it was, you know, it sounded good on all, say, platforms I was listening on, i.e. car, etc. So I'm going to get stuck in. I'm going to mute myself here. If I see any banter in the old chatteroo, I will try to entertain it. But what we're going to do now, as I said there a second ago, is just work on the mix as per Nick's feedback. And hopefully that makes for an interesting watch. So I'm just going to mute myself here. So currently, what I'm doing is I'm just having a look for a particular sample here, drum sample. Channel one. Of course, I would have removed it. So yeah, basically, right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try hot swapping some kicks and see how that works. And if I decide to go absolutely crazy, I might hot swap some bass lines as well. More like bass one shots, you know. But we'll see now how we get on. For now, as I said, look, I'm just looking for this one particular sample here just to see if it works. And if it does, happy days. I'll do a bit of work on it. But if it doesn't, I'll just probably try and tweak the original kick. But hopefully, I don't have to do that. So I'll be back in a sec there now. I'm just gonna keep looking for this. Cool. So, yeah, what we were doing there, right, was so just to reiterate, the feedback I got from Nick was that the kick itself was a bit too boxy and was taking up a bit too much low end, which, to be fair, if you look at the waveform itself there, like that's quite a long kick, like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's the attack of the kick, and then this is just decaying along at like sub frequencies. So, visually you can tell that he's absolutely spot on. So what I decided to do was I right click this, went to convert drums to new MIDI track, and what that does is it gives you just MIDI trigger of the actual transients. So it takes the transients and then it puts them in the correct place there in MIDI. Now, the thing is, it's not perfect, right? So it actually threw on like a rake of different stuff I didn't want at all. Like, so what I had to do is I went through it, just played it through once along with it, just to make sure that there was no gaps. There was one or two there, um, but they are fixed now. So I like this kick. Got it there from my buddy Les Uns. I don't know if he's online or not, but the sample is really nice. Yeah, really fat. I'm going to try and work with that, give it a little bit of more juice, make sure it's not spilling everywhere, and then I'm going to attack the actual bass line itself. Once he's done those two, then it's on to just separating each one of these groups. So keeping our bass a little bit separate from our keys, keeping our keys separate from our drums, all the rest there. So go back to it now anyway, and any questions, just leave them in the comments. Right. So just to reiterate what we're doing here, we're working off of the feedback we got from Nick, the mastering engineer, and we are attempting to just basically what we're trying to do is put in his changes here, and once it's all clarified and it's good to go from our end here, it'll go back to him. Right now, the feedback he gave us was, first and foremost, the kick was too boxy and clouding up the low end too much, and it definitely was in hindsight. Too boxy would be to do with the attack, the tone of the attack, and too much to say clouding up the low end. What I presume he's referring to there would be the decay and the amount of it and the frequency band that it was in, right? So what I did was I took out the kick. First and foremost, as I said, I took the kick file, did this convert drums to MIDI, got this MIDI track, tweaked it to make sure it was perfect. Once it was, I dropped in another sample that I want to use instead of it. Very nice sample, very attacky, not a whole lot of decay, gives a lot of our low end space to kind of breathe a bit. As for the bass, I went in, I sidechained back to this new kick, and basically I did that, and I put a little bit of saturation on both there as well, the sub and the 303, and I feel like it kind of gels them a little bit better now. The next part here, now I might come back and revisit them a little bit in a second anyway, but the next part of all of this tweaking here is to give a bit more separation to each element. So keep our basses in the bass and keep our keys up high, and basically tighter EQing is what he means there when he says that. So I'm going to just go through some cleaning up here now. I'm going to delete this guy. Good luck, we don't need you. And I'm going to just clean up each one of these elements a little bit more and carve out the mix a tiny bit further. And I'll be back in. As I said, any chat or comments or anything, just leave a message and I'll get to it there in a second. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. You absolutely hate to see it. Ableton 10. Conflicting. And now we pray that I have not lost any work. Would you like to reopen? Yeah, I would. I sure would. But I wish it was not under these circumstances. Looks like it's still got everything here, so that's the main thing. I do frequently Command S over and over and over, so I wouldn't be too worried, but doesn't bode well for my expectations with new FabFilter plugins that it's crashing Ableton. Given that was the reason why I was trying to get away from the iLock stuff, because that was crashing Ableton. But sure, look, we'll put it down to gremlins, and we won't jump to any conclusions for now. Right. So yeah, sorry, no, I haven't been very attentive. I don't think there's a whole lot going on in the chat anyway. But yeah, so I'm working away here on just trying to get this whole tune sound a bit better. Definitely sounds much cleaner on the Sennheisers now anyway. I did quite a bit of EQing there. Now, one thing I do want to try and figure out here is the dynamic EQ feature on the Fab filter. So it's my first time using it, so I can't say I'm an expert. I do know how to EQ in general, but the features of this I'm not quite sure of. So select EQ bands in the EQ display. Okay, well, I know the problem starts to happen here when it starts to go a bit crazy. Now, then adjust the dynamic range ring around the gain knob in the band controls. Okay. Haha. Very cool. Okay, so look. Okay. And hover over an EQ band in the display and use the mouse key while holding it down the Alt key to adjust the dynamic range for this band or select EQ bands. Okay. Hover above an EQ band in the display. So this one. Use the mouse wheel while holding the Alt key to adjust the dynamic range. So let's see. Ah, handy. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to use that ring specifically. Okay. Select EQ bands in display. Okay, loads of different ways of doing it. Okay, now range ring sets from toggle down in favor and default when in auto mode. Threshold is constantly adjusting to the level of the current band limited trigger signal. Okay. Click it to enable the custom threshold mode, revealing the threshold slider. So click here, threshold slider. Get into the gnarly bit. Dynamic EQ, very cool. Should have fixed it earlier, much earlier, but geez, here we are, fixing it now. Cool, okay, happy enough with that. Alright, just gonna give it one more playthrough on the Genel X there, see what we can do. Good day to you, Mr. Unce. Hello there. So yeah, welcome. I am. I got feedback from Nick there. I've been shiting on about it for a while here, so I'll send you a screenshot of it. But basically, yeah, he said the kick was too boxy and too boxy and too. Basically, he was saying that the attack. Yeah, he's hurt. You're there. Good man. All right, Grant. Well, look, I'm gonna get back to playing this. So. Right. So, yeah, I think I'm going to call it just withered. I'd say productivity has taken a hit as well. You know, you can't be at this same, like mixing this kind of stuff for 2 hours at a time. You're just going to, it's not going to be perfect after the first kind of 35, 40 minutes, particularly if it's a track you've been listening to a lot lately, which of course I have. So, I think I'm going to call it, and I think I'm happy with it. I don't have any authority here on whether or not it's a good mix anymore, purely because of how much time I've spent on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to Nick, pray that it's all good, and then if it is, he can just get stuck into it, and then hopefully we'll have it back by next week. Now, it's a slight bit of sad news. I know, sad face, but the next week will be the last week of streams of this series. So yeah, basically I kind of move around a good bit. So I'm in particular places of Ireland for a certain amount of time, and then I'm off somewhere else for a certain amount of time, and blah blah. So next time I'm here, sorry, my speech is probably quite low. Next time I'm here, I'm gonna do another stream, alright, but this time round though, it's be tomorrow or next week will be the last one, so hopefully we can get Nick on for the mastering chat. But look, I'll love you and leave you and submit this to Nick, and hopefully that's the end of it. So thanks very much for joining me, and I will see you next week for our final week of streams.